What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And I've decided that you're getting 3 lists from me this year, because today I'm going to be ranking all the new seasons of television I watched in 2024. Yes, I'm not going to be combining all the TV shows and movies I watched into a single video. I'm going to be splitting them up because I saw a few more seasons of TV than I did by the end of last year, and I have a good bit more to say about some of these than I did last year. To be completely honest, this was a pretty crappy year for TV. There were a few excellent pieces of television entertainment this year, especially once we get to my top 3, but most TV shows this year ranged from being extremely disappointing to being incredibly average, and I quickly realized that there was no way for me to keep this list objective. I usually aim for these videos to be mostly subjective with a bit of objectivity mixed in, but that was impossible in this case. My opinions on these TV shows have fluctuated so much over the course of the year, and there was no way for this to be an objective list. So, without further ado, let's get started with number 9. My least favorite, but not necessarily worst season of television that I watched this year was none other than Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 1. Now, this show started streaming at the end of 2023, but I saved it for this video, and unfortunately, I've forgotten basically everything about it. That's not to say it was completely devoid of merit. There were entertaining moments. The guy who plays Ares was frickin' hilarious. The late, great Lance Reddick in his brief appearance as Zeus was an incredibly powerful presence. Walker Scobell did a pretty good job. Too bad I had to sit through the awful Adam Project in order to get him as Percy. Well, this show wasn't terrible. It commits the cardinal sin of being utterly forgettable. It has a serious exposition and pacing problem, with characters constantly explaining things outright before they occur, so there are no real surprises. And the show feels weirdly sanitized. Maybe I'm misremembering since I read these books so long ago. I don't think they're high art by any means, but I remember those early Percy Jackson books having a certain edge to them. There was a spunk to Percy that wasn't really present here. It very much feels like a Disney Channel show. It has that vibe about it, if you know what I mean. And as a result, there's nothing about it that sticks out to me as being memorable or impactful in any way. It just kind of went in one ear and came out the other, and I haven't thought about it since, so that's why it ended up at the bottom of my list. Moving on to number 8. Oh boy, I know a lot of people are going to crucify me for this in the comments. I have Arcane Season 2. This season has just gotten worse and worse for me the more that I've thought about it, especially when I reflected on how much I enjoyed the previous season. Now, I never talked extensively about Arcane Season 1 on this channel, but I liked it a lot. I thought it was a solid, well-done story. But Season 2 feels like it has enough story content to fill up 5 seasons, yet it's all condensed into 9 half-hour episodes. So everything is extremely rushed. And I mean that. Story developments happen insanely fast because the plot needs them to happen that way for any of this to play out the way that they want it to. Characters will do a complete 180 on their entire belief system in like 5 minutes. They'll say they're going to do something, and the next time you see them, they've done it. There's none of that in-between stuff. They give you the setup and what they believe to be emotional payoffs without any of the build-up required for them to be meaningful in any way. And I find that to be an incredibly unsatisfying form of storytelling. Do you guys remember Vi from season 1? Yeah, that girl who was essentially the main protagonist. Well, she might as well not be in this season. Calling her a character is being quite generous, because she has no agency in the plot here. She does little to nothing to affect the narrative throughout this season. One of my favorite stories from the previous season was the relationship between Jace and Victor. These two men with humble beginnings whose ambition eventually gets the better of them to a point where their technology hurts innocent people, something that went against their entire goal to help humanity, resulting in them vowing to destroy their life's work. In this season, however, Jace is reduced to a hammer-wielding psychopath who kills people for no reason, and Victor literally becomes Jesus. I'm not kidding. The finale of this season devolves into a Marvel-esque shooty-shoot punch-punch lasers battle with Jace and Victor flying around as war breaks out. When did the show become this? This series went from being a small-scale story about interpersonal relationships, drug wars, and class conflicts to being an Avengers-level, end-of-the-world threat. That is when the show lost me. And that's why it receives this spot on my list, because I had high expectations for this show, and it disappointed me immensely. At number 7, I have The Lord of the Rings of Power Season 2. I bet you guys are surprised that I put this above Arcane, but I think the two actually have more in common than most would like to believe, especially when it comes to their odd pacing and minimal build-up to their narrative payoffs. This show isn't without its redeeming qualities. The score is fantastic, there are some good performances in here, and moments that I really like in isolation, but unfortunately all of those things are let down by a terrible script and bizarre plot structure. I've already gone over a lot of this in my video on the season, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. But the things I like about this season are far more noteworthy than the two below it on this list. Moving right along to number 6, I have Star Wars Tales of the Empire, a show which I would call the epitome of mid. As with most Star Wars shows, at least the animated ones, the quality of the animation is off the charts, and the Kiners deliver some killer music, as per usual, but why they chose to focus this season on Morgan Elsbeth, a character no one cares about, and Barriss Offee, a character we haven't seen in over a decade, is beyond me. Barriss's episodes are considerably more interesting than Morgan's, and there were some good ideas present in them, but the limited runtime of the episodes prevented me from becoming fully invested in these characters' stories. I don't know what it is with Disney Plus limiting these shows to being like 6 to 8 episodes, but it needs to stop. Otherwise, this show could have been legitimately great, but what we ended up getting was something pretty mediocre and forgettable. And coming in at number 5, I have LEGO Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. I'm just as surprised as you are that this ended up so high on my list, but upon reflecting on how bad a lot of TV this year was, I realized that it's better than most. On a surface level, it seems like a bit of good old-fashioned, goofy Star Wars fun. But somehow, it manages to be more creatively stimulating and engaging as a story than most of the recent output from Disney Star Wars, while having better animation quality and better humor than most of the recent LEGO specials in general. It manages to do all of this while simultaneously spoofing how stupid the franchise has become. That's a commendable feat, if you ask me. And at number 4, I have Murdoch Mysteries Season 17. A bit of a surprise, I know, because I haven't exactly been talking up Murdoch recently, because Seasons 15 and 16 were quite low on my lists for the previous 2 years. However, Season 17 was a return to form for the show. After a few lackluster seasons of garbage, frankly, there are obviously a few duds in here, but it more or less goes back to the fun-filled spirits of the pre-Season 13 era of Murdoch. We've got some good old-fashioned murder mysteries. The show goes back to its roots instead of trying to tell some grand overarching narrative with intersecting plot lines. At its core, it's a goofy murder mystery show. And this season remembers that for the first time in years. There's also a creative spark that's been lacking for a while. There's a straight-up musical episode in this season, and it actually worked. I'm not kidding. Why Is Everybody Singing is one of the best episodes of the entire series, because it completely goes for it and somehow succeeds. I'm not gonna say this is a great or even necessarily good season of television, but compared to everything else I saw this year, it stands out. Now we get to the real good stuff, because in third place I have The Penguin Season 1. I got 2 episodes into this show a few months ago, and I wasn't sure if I'd be able to finish it due to how heavy the subject matter is, but I figured I needed to finish it for this video. I did it for you guys, so I binged the rest of it right before Christmas, and that may have been a mistake, because this show is relentlessly bleak and oppressive. It's just an endless series of messed up twists, reveals, and betrayals, but it's fascinating to watch. One of my friends is actually studying psychology, so it was a lot of fun talking to him about the psychology of all these different characters. Oz, Sophia, Vic, how their life experiences inform their decisions, and how the world around them shapes them into what they become by the end of the story. And Colin Farrell, man, what a transformative performance from him. He embodied this character, and props to them for not shying away from showing how twisted this guy really is, especially with so many studios nowadays being afraid of showing villains as actual villains. I mean, just look at Tom Hardy's Venom movies. Venom is essentially just a straight-up superhero at this point. But this show has some of the most raw scenes of villainy I think I've ever seen in a piece of superhero media. But it's not without a glimmer of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel, because, spoiler alert, the final shot of the series is the bat signal shining into the sky, a reminder that despite how much corruption may exist in the world, there will always be those who oppose it. Batman is still out there. Vengeance is coming for the Penguin. Justice will be served, and I personally cannot wait to see that happen. But moving on to number 2, I have surprise, surprise, The Bear Season 3. This is just another fantastic season of an already great show, building off of the groundwork from the next level Season 2. The great character work continues here with an excellent interpersonal arc for Carmi, the protagonist, but the dynamics between all the tertiary characters are great as well. We have an awesome flashback episode for Tina, as well as an episode entirely about Sugar and her mother, while Sugar is about to give birth to her child. There are just so many fantastic episodes and moments throughout this season that capture the human condition in a way that I don't think I've ever seen portrayed on film. The one thing that is frustrating about this season is that it's inconclusive. It ends on a cliffhanger. A lot of the stories that this season built up go unresolved by the end, which I'm usually not a big fan of. But this show has a track record, and as long as Season 4 delivers a story of the same quality as this one, then I will be more than satisfied. Here's to hoping that Season 4 delivers next year so this season can remain at this spot on my 2024 list. And finally, at number 1, a show that did not have an inconclusive ending. Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 3. Yep, for the second year in a row, The Bad Batch topped my TV show list, and this is what I was referring to at the beginning of the video when I said it was going to be entirely subjective, because if I were being objective, The Bear and the Penguin are better than this. But I couldn't not put this show at number 1 due to how special it is to me. Look, I was not in a good place mentally at the beginning of this year. I started having severe anxiety to the point where I almost didn't want to leave the house. One of the only things that helped me through it was being able to come back every week to watch an episode of this group of clone misfits that I've come to love making their way through the galaxy. Whether you like it or not, this show was never going to be about the clone rebellion or the greater affairs of the Star Wars galaxy. It was always about the title characters, the Bad Batch, these outcasts that somehow find a way to survive together through incredibly dark times. It gave me hope at a time when I nearly had none. And unlike basically everything else to have come out of this franchise in the last few years, it actually bothered to realistically develop the relationships between all of its characters. Crosshair is legitimately one of the most well-written fictional characters I've seen in a long time, and he's not the only good one. Basically, all the characters are great, and they are given an ending that seemed impossible for them. They're able to achieve peace. These soldiers, these heroes, get what they've been deprived of for their entire lives. They lost things. They made sacrifices, but they're actually able to live their lives. Lives that, as Emery points out in the finale, have never been their own. But their love for each other persevered through it all. Even the genius intellect of Dr. Hemlock was unable to overcome the power of family. Does that sound cheesy when I say it out loud? Sure, but it's so well done. This show isn't perfect by any means, but it's perfect to me, and it might very well be some of the last good Star Wars storytelling we're liable to get. Fingers crossed that Andor Season 2 delivers in a few months, but Aside from that, my hopes aren't high for this galaxy far, far away, but at least we were given this gem of a story that remained good from beginning to end. And that's it for my ranking of all the new TV shows that I watched this year. As I said at the beginning of the video, there were a lot of crap shows this year, but there were a few shows that pushed the boundaries of the medium, and one or two in particular that affected me on a deeply personal level. But you guys let me know. What did you think of my list? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? What were your favorite shows of the year? Did I miss out on any of them? Just whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments below. And of course, as always, I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.